All right, guys, welcome back. This is Self-Selecting Podcast with Miss Hana Devore. How are you?
Oh,
How are
hey,
you?
good. Thanks for having me.
Um, Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here. You're so freaking pretty. You're so beautiful. How are you so
So are
beautiful?
you. Look at you with your HD camera and shit.
It's just it's the lights, it's the makeup, it's the heavy contour. But thank you. You're so sweet. Um, for listeners who don't know who you are, let's give them just a introduction. Just
Okay.
tell us who you are.
Okay. So, I am an IFBB Pro in bikini, and I'm a coach on Team Fit Body Fusion. I've been on Fit Body Fusion for over 10 years. I just passed my 10-year anniversary. Started off as a client, evolved into a coach. I'm still actually a client, so my coach is Jamie DeBernard. I've been with her this whole time. My background is in food and beverage marketing. I worked in food marketing for about 15 years, and I actually recently left the corporate world and started coaching full time. It's something that I was doing on the side with a very small roster. I was just learning, competing myself, just developing the skills. And then once I felt like I got to a point where I could do it full time, I did it. I just felt like there was just this calling. I felt like I could help people more so there rather than in what I was doing in the corporate world, and it just worked better for my work-life balance. So the cool thing now is that I have this background in food marketing, and I have this like behind the scenes knowledge of food that I get to apply to coaching. I coach I would say my roster is about 50-50 lifestyle and competitors, specializing mostly in bikini competitors. I've got a couple wellness girls, but I started off with lifestyle really being my bread and butter because I was also a lifestyle client. And even as a competitor, I'm kind of a hybrid lifestyle competitive client because I take like long extended off seasons. I travel. I like to do life. I like to live a really balanced life. So I love coaching both lifestyle and competitors. I'm from LA. I was moved out to Buffalo. I was relocated by a frozen food company that I worked for a few years, and then now I'm out in Scottsdale, Arizona, out near the Fit Body Fusion headquarters, and I just moved here, and I'm just adjusting to Arizona life.
Amazing, amazing. I didn't know that Fit Body Fusion was headquartered out of Arizona. That's amazing. Have they always been out
Yeah.
there?
No, so when I joined, we were in Sacramento. So I was living in Northern California, and Jamie, our owner, founder, she was in Sac. Then she ended up in Texas for a short stint, and then ended up in Arizona. I think we'll probably be here for a while. And we have a small group of coaches and some, like team managers. We've got a really good group out here, and just being out here has been a lot better for my career and my bodybuilding career. Just having more of like this culture around me, like the culture here is great, and there's so much to do. So it's been really fun so far.
That's amazing. I'm so happy that you're now able to be more immersed in that community, and honestly shift more of that focus towards business ventures. I mean, being a part of Fit Body Fusion for so long, you have got to be like you're OG, like you're grandfathered in like into
Yeah.
that first round, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is there anyone who's been there longer? I gotta ask.
Yeah,
Like, I feel like you've
yeah,
been
yeah.
there the longest.
There's a few. There's a few. So we've got our team manager, Angela. She's an OG. We've got Angela Rutherford, a coach, who's still back in SAC. We've got Jessica Quillian out here. She's a mom of 3 now, and yeah, we've got some girls who go way back. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So, okay, so when I guess really that first entry into competing, I mean, like you started. Gosh, what? Where did you
2014.
start competing? Yeah, in
Where?
2014,
San
and
Jose, actually. San Jose was my
was it
first
San
show.
Jose? Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. So your experience, you've been in the sport a decade. you've seen a change. You've seen a change from 2014 to 2018, 2018 to 20 to 24. Thoughts. How would you depict that evolution?
For myself, as a bodybuilder, it's kind of like a constant game of catch up. There's a constant chase because it's a constant moving target. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it keeps me on my toes. I think it does add a level of challenge, the way that it's evolved, and it continues to evolve. It's like every time I go to a show, like I notice something new or something different, or we get feedback from judges and we're like, oh, really? Or we're talking about moving away from the X frame into more of an S curve. You know, it's like there's always something that's like kind of new. So yeah, you know, the bikini physique used to be incredibly attainable. It is still very much attainable, but it used to be very, very much attainable. So I started lifting. I was not always lifting. I started when I was about 24-ish, and I just wanted to get strong. I was leaving a bad relationship, wanted to build up some armor. Some of that stuff I'll also say goes kind of back to childhood as well, of just wanting to like build that armor up, feel strong, feel independent, feel like I could kick some ass if I needed to. And so I start lifting in this little gym, and of course, you know, as soon as right when you start lifting, the response that you see, the changes that you see are like pretty immediate when you start to do something very, very drastically different. And back then, my only resource was bodybuilding.com. That was it. It was like Jamie Eason, whatever she's doing. And I just went off of like bodybuilding.com articles. I was just researching, and I met Jamie, and 2 weeks later stepped on stage at San Jose, went to nationals. So I will say, and I was natural, you know, back then it was a bit easier, I would say, to, you know, start lifting weights, follow a diet, follow some macros, see a pretty big response, get on stage, and, you know, the level that they were expecting, or the criteria, was just, the bar was a little bit lower, at least where I started. And from there, we've just been pushing, man, like even the bikini division, it's just every year, it's just, you know, the bar is raised more and more and more. The caliber of athletes is wild now. You know, it used to be like, oh, here's a bikini. Oh yeah, you know, just jump into a bikini competition. It's not like that. It's extremely competitive. If you want it to be, the cool thing I'll say is that there are still opportunities for, you know, the novice girls to jump into maybe the right show for them, maybe a show that's not quite as competitive as what I'm talking about. There are also some new shows popping up with things like a transformation division. I really like to see that. I like to see, it's like, if we're going to raise the bar crazy, crazy, crazy high, I really don't want to see us leave people behind. And so I like to see that there are new shows, there are more maybe natural opportunities, more transformation opportunities. So I'm really happy to see that. I hope we see more of that. Back then, I was very much natural. I was very much the person who would tell you that I was natural, because back then it was like, ooh, like, don't talk about steroids, don't do steroids, don't be a cheater. And I think that the level of knowledge and, you know, the level of education was just nowhere near what we have now. So I started off natural and wanted to obviously like maximize my natural ability. So I went for many, many years as a natural athlete and just pushed myself to the absolute max for me, with my genetics, with my lifestyle, my capabilities. And then it just got to the point where it's like, all right, I've done just about everything. I've stuck with just about every kind of diet. I've tried everything. I've been consistent. I have even dabbled in powerlifting in the off season to really put on some mass. And then it got to a point where I talked to Jamie, and it's like, okay, let's see if we can step it up a little bit with PEDs. Can we jump, can we just kind of dabble a bit? Can we learn, observe, adapt? And so we did. And so now where I'm at as an IFBB Pro, I do have those feelings of, you know, and I'm in a growth season too. So I'm like really trying to play catch up right now. And I do have those feelings of like, man, will I ever catch up? Sometimes I've had thoughts that I'll say are not accurate, but I have had those kind of toxic thoughts where I'm like, do I just need to just run everything to make this happen, you know? Or like, am I never going to be enough if I don't do more, maybe more than I even want to? And then I'll have a conversation with Jamie and kind of reel it back in. And she's like, you really, really don't have to. And we'll talk about all of the pros who are like running the tiniest amounts, you know, just to get that little extra edge. But really we know where the work comes from, and it's really in the consistency and in the training. So I'm kind of like constantly having to remind myself of that. So it's been an interesting, this off season's been interesting. I basically went off from COVID on, haven't competed in a while, and it's been really interesting because I'm like sitting over here like ready to go, but also like, ooh, those girls are big and those girls are hard and they're bubbly, and you know, so that's a very long-winded explanation of that.
No, I love it. Very comprehensive, but I think the context matters, and I can definitely relate to even now those same thoughts of, you know, shit, like should I just take the drugs? Like, I mean, is that the missing link? And I think it's amazing that you have Jamie in your corner to ground you, but also remind you, like, yes, here's where those thoughts are coming from. It's not just the missing link, and you can definitely have a competitive career, especially, I mean, like your structure, your shape is incredible. And I mean, like, if listeners, if they're not familiar with Hana's physique, definitely go follow her and stalk her and like all of her photos, please. But your last showing, I mean, like, you looked incredible. And like, when I remember it, and I'm sure you've posted like a side by side between just your older physique, like maybe where you turned pro, as opposed to that last showing.
Yeah.
You know, density out the ass. Like, you added so much tissue, and it's just such a pretty shape that I know what you mean. Because even in the last like 3 years, like, I just watch pro shows and I'm like, that's another 2 pounds, like, just to my glutes. Like, that's great. I thought I was getting closer, and now there's a bigger gap, which can be defeating. But at the same time, like, I personally think that like where we're moving is a very competitive look in a division that historically has, I mean, kind of been trashed. Like, I mean, like, it was 2018, 2020, we were saying like you would have, I mean, and like, well, I get it. Like, we're the least muscular compared to the other divisions, but I don't know. I do kind of take pride in, like, I like that leaner look. I like the denser look. So, I mean, like, the direction's generally moving in a direction that I find favorable. I mean, because when we both got into the sport, I mean, like, I don't know many people who were told, like, you need more glutes. It was specifically bring your legs down. It was almost addition by subtraction, which I, like, looking back, I'm like, are you high? Like, I was 8, like, at 19. Like, I was so tiny. Like, I didn't need less leg. You wanted me to have bone? Like, no, like, more glutes would have right.
Yeah,
so
just baby.
I guess when we look,
bikini. Yeah.
time.
And I'll also say, like, there's so much more to it than just like the density or like the drugs. Like, the posing, like, shit, it is a full-blown presentation, and it is an art. And when you are not dedicating enough time to posing, you are seriously like, you're just taking away from that whole presentation. I think that everyone wants to focus on, I mean, a lot of us really do like posing, but a lot of people really want to focus on the training and the diet and put everything into those baskets, and then forget that truly, if you think about it, on competition day, what do you show the judges? Do you lift weights? Do you meal prep? You don't get to do any of that stuff. We don't really get to show our art. We don't get to demonstrate our art. The only art that we get to demonstrate is the posing. So when you think of it that way, like, shit, the only thing I get to demonstrate is, you know, whatever's left over from that art that I was doing in, you know, in the gym and at home. But then really I have to put on a show. And the posing is, like, incredible.
It really has reached a level of competition that, I mean, I don't think you can skate by on just winging it, unless like maybe you come from a background where you just have it. Personally, that's not me. That's not me. I put a lot of time to have, I would consider just very subpar posing compared to most pros. Most pros, the ones who are doing well, they are professionals at posing. Like they're so good, and
Yeah.
I mean, it shows. They put a lot of time into it. I think it's a really good segue into just now being in a position where you have taken on a lot of responsibility as a coach. As an athlete, yes, you have endeavors, but you probably find yourself in the position where you're having conversations around whether an athlete, you can call it, they have what it takes, their potential in the sport, but you're at that decision making potentially with clients where they're like, do I need to use enhancements? Am I at the point where it makes the most sense? Have I maxed out everything I can do? Tell me a little bit about those conversations.
Yeah, so I prefer to work with a client for quite some time, have them do at least a couple of shows and get a lot of feedback, get a lot of experience with them, be able to go into a show, come out of a show, have some off-season time, and really see what the big picture of them as a natural athlete looks like first. And then we can really see, and then obviously get them on stage, get some judges' feedback, see them next to the other girls, of course. Throw them into a couple of different categories, especially like if they're novice, like throw them into, kind of get them on stage as much as we can to just say, okay, here's what it's going to look like, and get them in those different groups with the different competitors to just to be able to compare, and then I like to get them out of the show, of course, dedicate a lot of resources to the off season. I take that post-show reverse, however slow or however fast, I take it very, very seriously. I ensure that my clients take it seriously as well. Like, we do maintain balance. Of course, you're not about to step on stage. I think you should have life balance, but we need to take that post-show period very seriously and understand that that's when the real bodybuilding work is done. In my opinion, it's called bodybuilding. That's what I always remind them. I'm like, it's not body cutting. We can cut for shows, but it's called bodybuilding. So I get them into those phases if we haven't already had one, So I like to look at them in many different phases of their bodybuilding journey, no matter how short or how long, and then really get a full picture of who they are, what their values are, what their lifestyle looks like, what the future looks like for them, what is truly important to them. I have some girls who the idea of winning a show is actually a little bit lower on the priority list. They want to do it, but that is lower versus some of the other lifestyle stuff, including having kids, including just what the rest of their life looks like. The winning a show is a little bit lower. It kind of depends on what the client wants, what they're willing to do to get it, how far they want to push in the sport, and do they have the mental fortitude and also, of course, the foundation of health to do this, to start to introduce PEDs. So, like, the first step is, so I've had this conversation recently. I've got a few girls who have competed recently, step off stage, we have our little recap, we look at the photos, we talk about the judges' feedback, and we go, okay, so one of the next steps to really get the density that you need is going to be, here's an option. I don't say you need to do you have to do this. I say, here's an option. Here's what could work. Here's what I do. And I will only, prescribe something that I've done myself. So that I can share that and say, like, hey, let's start with this. I've tried that. Here's how it made me feel. Here are my thoughts on that. And then the next first step is to, of course, get labs done. So it's also like there's so much to consider, because then even just when we talk about getting labs done, now there's cost involved. So we need to talk about budget. Like, I am not going to, if I know my client very well and I know how tight their finances are, I'm not going to push them in this direction. And, unless they were to say, I want to win a show, I want to turn pro, I want to do this, then I'm going to say, okay, then you're going to stop going to Starbucks and you're going to use that money to get this other stuff done, you know? So it really depends on the person. It's so unique from person to person. But, you know, one of the first steps is always labs, establish health, you know, see where they're currently at. And like, I can look back at my tracker and see, have they had a regular cycle for a long period of time? You know, I track my clients' periods, their entire cycle very, very closely. I know how it affects them. I know the timing. I know what form of birth control they're on and if that has any implications on their health. So there's a lot, for me at least, that goes into it, and I do feel a great sense of responsibility with it.
I absolutely love that. And I mean, like, I know I can gather, but I know listeners can gather too, the care that goes into those kind of decisions. And even just like the associated cost. I mean, I think right now we're in really a phase in fitness where it has, I mean, seemingly become very trendy to rely heavily exclusively on labs. As a coaching pitch, as like, oh hey, I look at lab work, and like that's something that is kind of bundled as a selling point. Well, this coach, they're gonna look at my labs. But when you start digging into what are being done with those labs, or how often those labs are being required, it becomes very steep for the client, and you'll almost have to ask, okay, is this completely necessary, or is this just creating the facade that your health is being monitored? Where's the actual monitoring being done? And it's something that I recently just spoke with a consultation who was asking, like, how often do you require labs to be done? I'm like, well, they need to be indicated. I'm not going to ask you to go spend the money on something if there's not a reason, if we're not trying to gather something. And I think that's a really good rule with diagnostics, not limited to lab work, but even like GI maps, anything on the digestive tract. Like when you have specialists who are like, hey, okay, well, we can start working together, but I'm going to need this $1,200 bill reconciled because that's going to give me the starting information. It's like, I don't love that. Like, I mean, just like my radar, I kind of see, I just have questions. Like, hey, is that completely necessary, or is it just a front to make it seem like you're gathering information? And in reality, like what we've seen is that a lot of that data, I guess really all data, isn't weighted equally. And in different points in someone's contest prep or outside of contest prep, different values will be more meaningful. So I think definitely with your answer there, that was just super insightful into how you approach the coaching. And it is multifaceted and really depends on what the client's goals are. So
age. I have a lot of masters competitors too. You know, it's different. It's very different when they are, you know, entering menopause or post, you know, and it really, age creates a whole new, you know, challenge that we really have to stay on top of. Yeah.
I think when we start looking at a needs analysis relative to PEDs, and that's not to say just steroids, just anabolics, but even our non-androgenic PEDs, our peptides, our fat burners, what is the consideration around those, around, you know, maybe the athlete who they aspire to do well, but that's kind of the extent of it. They don't know if they want to be a pro. They don't know if they want to do this for 5-10 years. They haven't really thought into like family planning, but they know they're like, okay, I'm showing up, I'm committed, I've been a part of, you know, in this case, you and y'all's coaching relationship, they're doing everything you ask from them. When we start looking at that conversation around introducing, maybe like in a stepwise fashion, the non-androgenic PEDs or even peptides, is that something, and I guess like in a way, like just dependent on lab work? Absolutely. But is that something that there's a little more forgiveness or willingness to let them explore even those avenues?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to anything, and I also like, I want bodybuilding to be accessible. You know, I don't want young girls to think, or young guys to think like, oh, I'm going to have to do this to even think about getting on stage. You know, I do think that we need to continue to make fitness and bodybuilding accessible for everyone. Like, this is something that should be, that everyone should be able to do. So, you know, I do have clients who compete in natural feds. that speaks to them more. They like that culture more. They don't necessarily want to go up against the untested gals. And then also, like I said, there's some new kind of alternative shows popping up, like that summer shredding show. I just had a client do. So really, it's like I'm here to make the client's dream. I'm here to make their dreams come true. I'm really like I'm here to help them reach their goals, and I'm really just here to just help them in whatever they want that journey to look like. So yeah, we have that conversation, and if they're curious about something, we talk about it. If they want to try something, like, we talk about it, as long as it's not something that's going to be really detrimental to their health. And in terms of, not jumping straight into like anabolics, well, again, and it depends on the client, but if I have them do labs, a lot of the time what I want to see first is where their test is at. So, and that's something that, J3, John and team really drove home when I got that certification with them, and I took a whole like weekend course with them where I was like in a classroom, and it was like, why aren't we looking at test first? Why are we just throwing girls on Anavar? So there's just a lot to look at. And for some of my clients, the solution has actually been HRT. So it's like, there's no one size fits all, and we have to stay really flexible and be willing to adapt for the client. And yeah, but also like I have a natural girl who just won an overall, like in a tough NPC show. Like, it's happening. Like, so if you're listening to this and you're worried about like blowing all of your money on steroids, it's, you really don't have to. And I think it's important that we keep this all pretty accessible.
Totally. I agree. And I think oftentimes the assumption is, there's a lack of information. People see these physiques that are being rewarded. And the assumption is, okay, well, I'm working hard. I'm doing everything that my coach is asking me to. I must be at the end of my rope. It must be the PEDs that I'm missing. So let me go down that route. And I think oftentimes that's just simply not true. There's just so much more.
Yeah.
And I think
let me see your training videos, like, let me see your training. Like, let me see your meal prep. Let me give me a little bit more information. A lot of the time I don't think that clients are necessarily providing enough of that information to their coach for their coach to know, are you truly giving 100%? Like, I was just talking about this with Drew and Jordan Brannon. And we were talking about the concept of giving 100%, like when you think you're giving 100%. And then Drew was like, no, he goes, that's not 100%. There's always more, So it's like, sometimes there's more to look at, like training and intensity, form, all of that,
Absolutely. And that's an aspect, I think, for myself, like when I had someone actually coach me with my training and really put it under the microscope, it became obvious, like, no, there are a lot of stones that haven't been turned. There's a lot of areas that we can exploit that can essentially allow you to squeeze out more progress. And I think that's one of the components that with my coaching, and it sounds like with yours as well, that is maximized so that if the athlete does get to that point where they're like, hey, you know what, I am ready to make that decision and cross that threshold. Okay, they know for a fact, well, I've done everything I can that up until this point, that would put me in the best position to leverage whatever it is that I want to include. But I think, going back to the discussion around HRT, it's still something I would consider is very taboo. Oftentimes the clients that I speak with, they have had some kind of exposure to an anabolic. They've leveraged it typically in season. Very, very rarely has someone like really hammered like a good growth phase with an anabolic, which is something I would like to see more of. But very rarely is someone in a position where their test is optimized. And I mean, like, I hate to use the word, but it's like even just having it in a range where you are not suppressed. That's essentially what I want to get athletes to prior to the inclusion of PEDs. Like if you've already made the decision, if you're like, I'm going to take them because because you have the right to take them, because it's up to you. If you're free will, cool. Let's put you in a position where we know, just as we do with the training, with the programming and the intentionality behind these phases, where we know hormonally you can take advantage of these drugs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's so much to look at, and like you might look at some labs and see, and think that this is a client that is, in a good spot for PEDs, and then you look at the labs and it's like, well, there's so many things that are so off kilter. Cortisol is like through the roof or way too low. Test is like way too low, or sometimes way too high. There's a lot of things to consider. So it's like, at that point, I do like to look at the labs and just say, okay, are we fully optimized just as a human being first? So just as a human, let's say you weren't a bodybuilder, but you wanted to be the best version of yourself. Let's look at those numbers and just get you to that best version of yourself. Because why not check out how that would feel and how that would look, and implementing any like lifestyle changes, that might be needed, mental health stuff, that's going to come into play as well. So yeah, I think it's just about like getting to that baseline, making sure that you are fully optimized, hormones are optimized, everything's on point, and then it's like, okay, all of the stars are aligning for us to start, implementing some exogenous stuff.
Some steroids. Yep, ready for the steroids. They can throw it in at that point if they deem, yes. So I would love to hear more about your experience with different PEDs under both umbrellas. What have you found have been the benefits that you've gained from looking at some form of assistance over the course of your career?
Yeah, so I would say about, God, how many years in? I was probably about 5 years in, and we started hearing about SARMs, your favorite things on the planet, I know. So we started hearing about SARMs, and it was like, ooh, cool. So we have this alternative. We have this thing that it's not quite steroids, so maybe we can feel a little bit better about this, or it's something that we feel like we can dabble in with maybe less health implications. Again, with a lot of this stuff, we don't always have enough research. We don't always have enough information. So the first thing that I dabbled in was Austrian. I also try RAD? No, not RAD. I think I tried one more of like the cutting SARMs for a short period of time. I'm trying to remember which one. But Austrian was the first one that I actually was pretty consistent with. I did see good results. Labs were coming back pretty good. My liver, was in a good spot even after running that for a little bit. Not crazy drastic changes, I would say, but I felt like I was getting a bit of a better pump. I did feel stronger. I felt like I was maintaining that pump out of the gym. But now after running Anavar, like I know it wasn't quite at that level. It was a good way for me as a baby bikini girl to just start doing research, trying something, very closely monitoring how I felt, how I looked, labs, everything, and then kind of go from there. So it was an interesting first step for me. I always go like above and beyond with the research. I'm like reading every single possible thing I can. So I tried to just gather a ton of information, and I tried that. And of course, back then, I don't even remember the source I was getting it from. I don't remember what the sourcing was like, if it was, how high quality it was, testing, all of that. I don't even remember. And so after some time, it was like, okay, this is fine. But then, when you live in the bodybuilding world long enough, all of your friends are on Anavar, and you're just like, all right, I'm at this party. I'm the only one not doing it. So I had, a lot of friends who were having really great experiences with Anavar. So I talked to Jamie about it, and I was like, and she's all about this too. Let's do the lowest possible dose to see something, but let's not jump into 25 milligrams. Let's just start at the tiniest amount, because we're coming from nowhere. We're starting from zero. So I then it became an issue of sourcing. So this was a little while back. And first source was from a friend who got it from a friend. Not recommended. Don't do that, people. Don't do friend who got it from a friend. Don't do friend at the gym. Don't do, oh, there's this guy and he's this, he's this local coach and he's at my gym and he's got, he can sell me Anavar for, $15 a pill. And no, I used to be more okay with that. I don't think I quite understood it. The first time I tried it, I didn't love it. I just didn't feel quite myself. I felt, I don't know, mood maybe, fatigue. It just wasn't really clicking for me and I wasn't really seeing that benefit in the gym. So then finally I switched over, started working with Hormone Logics, who now manages like all of my labs for my clients, and actually started to get it prescribed by a doctor, and it's tested and it's very good quality. So I jumped into the 6.25 milligram dose for my first cycle. Kind of liked it. Again, wasn't super sold on it. I was like, I thought that this was going to be like the magic bullet, and then I was just going to all of a sudden be like Olympia ready, and I was like, okay, this is okay. But I wasn't super sold. Go off, and I talked to a lot of bodybuilders, and I'm like, tell me, like, do you really love this? Do you really see the benefit? Are you healthy? Like, tell me more. And all I heard were good things. So, when it was sourced well. So I have now ran a few of these small doses. I really haven't pushed it. I haven't pushed the dosage, and I'm just right now I'm off. I finished a cycle about 4 weeks ago, so I'm officially in that phase where I'm checking in with my coach, and I'm like, I want the drugs, like, where I'm just like, I need a little help. So now I'm kind of starting to, I'm sold on it. And what I find is that I just go into the gym and I just feel like a fucking athlete. And that's it. Like, I feel like I can push. I feel like I can really challenge myself. Yeah, I was doing that before, absolutely. But it is a little bit different. I feel like I walk around looking like more of an athlete. Could I have done that before? Yes. Again, I'm giving myself a little bit of the extra edge, and also understanding the fact that I used to think that this was like maybe taboo or maybe like cheating or something. I'm now at the point in the IFBB where it is what it is, and it is as common as taking pre-workout. So the whole kind of taboo-ness of it has gone out of my mind. I've also gotten to the point with education and with experience where it's just like, yeah, we can do this right, just like we can do anything else, just like my HRT is managed properly, just like, my supplementation is managed like professionally. I can do this in an educated and informed way. So I think for me, at the end of the day, I think it really just came down to experience.
I couldn't agree more with your testament to Anavar, just essentially feeling like a really good pre-workout. I mean, like, that has been my experience. And I mean, like, I think when your sourcing is there, when quality and I guess accuracy is not in question, I think it can facilitate better outcomes in the gym. But like you said, it's going to facilitate essentially what outcomes you are already experiencing. So if you're kind of like moseying your way through some really half-assed workouts, you're inconsistent on like even within fatigue management. If you're inconsistent with setting yourself up for good training sessions, you're more than likely going to experience, listeners will more than likely experience discrepancies in what kind of outcome using something like Anavar will produce. But I definitely think at this point it is much less taboo than it was. I mean, like 5-10 years ago. Now it is something that you're seeing a very quick uptick in use and in exposure. But I feel like without the intentionality, I mean, you're just leaving progress on the table. And that's where, in your case, I mean, like, you certainly, you have the ability to do well and be a competitive pro. Like, I mean, and that's with the use, like, that's with being conservative with your use and approaching it very methodically. So it's like, yes, if the understanding's there and I love how you describe that. If it's being managed professionally, it can augment everything else you're already doing in prep and can facilitate those results faster.
Yeah.
If those results aren't happening, or if you're kind of using it to compensate for something, well, I mean, like, adjusting expectations accordingly is a must.
Yeah, yeah. And just, you know, we get to this point, like, you've been in the sport long enough where we get to a point where we're just not as naive as we used to be. And we can even look at other sports. You know, I watch UFC and I'm like, yeah, USADA, really? You know, like, like, you can kind of look around and go, oh, okay, I see what's going on in a lot of areas, you know. So you're just less naive when you've just been in the sport for a long time and you've just seen a lot of things and you just kind of know where the bar is. Now, you know, then from there, it's just, what are you going to do health-wise? What are you willing to do? And advocating for your health and staying true to your values.
I think it's so important to remember this when auditing other competitors, and you know, there's nothing wrong with looking at, you know, others for inspo. And I guess I'm speaking more towards the athlete who's newer to the sport or coming up in the sport currently, you know, aspiring to be a professional, aspiring to be you know, a competitive pro. It's like, you have to remember that, like, it's not as simple as, well, everyone should be honest. It's like, okay, yeah, but context, okay? Like, there's a lot of livelihoods riding on someone's ability to make money within the sport. And frankly, I do see it as something like, if you are not selling a program that's depicting, hey, I got these results naturally, and you're not blatantly saying, like, hey, this was done without the use of enhancements. I really do think that athletes within the sports who have social media presences, they're entitled to privacy. And I see that, and it really, like, I see that often, like, being commented on, like, oh, why isn't she open about it? Why are these athletes getting to, you know, go about their career without disclosing the use? It's like, this is their life. Like, they don't owe it to the internet.
Yeah, I mean, look at, like, so many sports that we watch, entertainment that we watch. Do we know everything about everyone's lives? Like, we really don't. You know, you watch a movie with an actor. Do you expect that actor to tell you exactly what they did? Like, do you need to know everything about their lives? Like, yeah, I totally agree. And then I think that with us, there is this level of responsibility, and also we know that we have an influence over some of the younger girls. So we have to be really careful in towing the line of, like, I do want people to know what's going on realistically. I do think that they should know that. But also, I don't want to be saying something like, hey guys, I've been taking this and it's been working so great, and just leave it at that. And then they're like, oh, let me go find some Anavar. Okay. You know, like, I think that, like, I like what you're doing with the educational aspect of, like, what you've been doing, like, with your Instagram and just putting out just, like, straightforward, just real information. Just, like, here's the deal, guys. Like, it exists. Here's the education on it. And be smart about it, you know. Like, I'm definitely not trying to hide anything, but I also don't want to be, like, a champion for it because of who might be out there. You know, if I'm talking one-on-one with someone, like, or with, like, a client, I'll talk all day about it, but I don't want to be, like, putting up billboards for it without the educational aspect.
Absolutely. And I think that was one of the bigger decisions when I started putting out content, even just talking about PEDs, let alone my own use. It was like, well, I'm responsible for where this information goes and how it's perceived. Like, ultimately, people are going to take this and they're not going to listen with maybe the ear that I would hope they would. A lot of people think I'm talking about male doses. They're like, 2.5 milligrams Anavar, that's never going to work for a guy. I'm like, all right, you're late. It's fine. Okay, whatever. You just, okay. Yeah. And with that, it's like, there's been people that have, kind of speculated like, hey, like Corey used to, be very neutral on PEDs. It seems like she's talking about them so negatively. And I'm like, yeah, because these are combating a lot of the influences and the platforms that at this point are capitalizing on the discussion no longer being as taboo as it once was, and positively received. There's a lot of social media presence where these drugs are being promoted, and even in the case like being how do I want to say this, like, you have now affiliates for these larger clinics that are getting compensated based on their ability to sell. And like, okay, if you're aware as a consumer, like, they are pushing these drugs partially because if Morellin, okay, yeah, they're getting a pretty big kickback on that one, guys. Like, and those are the things. It's not to say like inherently, I think everyone should not take X, Y, and Z, or there's certain drugs that like you should just avoid completely. But I think specifically with the amount of information that's now being put out about these drugs, there's this inflation of how positive they are without the depiction of the risk, specifically for the female athlete.
Yeah.
With that, I kind of want to segue into some of the, I guess, less pharmacological, maybe that's not even the right term, but more of the holistic approaches that you've taken yourself to further your physique the last several years.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that's like, that's the bigger, bulk of what I do for myself anyways. So, yeah, there's a lot of work that goes in on the holistic side for sure. I got going on a major liver health kick several years ago, and I really had a lot of fun with that. And now the habits have remained. It's like anything. It's like when you go hard in the beginning, you tend to kind of trickle off, but a lot of those, there's some good core habits that stick around that you kind of can't like forget. So my liver health is still very important to me. That really happened after I had gone through some kind of hormonal issues. Just after pushing for my pro card, I competed so much. I dieted a lot. I trained a lot. I didn't really let off the gas for a while. So my hormones suffered a bit, nothing too major. But then as I was doing research, I started to learn the connection and how really everything is connected, but the connection between our hormones and our liver. And then, of course, digestion as well, and how it's all connected. And previously, as a non-bodybuilder, like, what average person's walking around talking about liver health? Like, it wasn't, I hadn't even thought about it. So then it's like I had to kind of go through some shit to then discover how important my liver was and start taking care of it, start really prioritizing it. So I started doing all the holistic things, and I bought a sauna, and I did my dry brushing, and of course all the supplementation. There's a lot of stuff that you can take for your liver. And then I started pulling out a lot of shit in my life that, once I realized that my liver was my filter. The liver is the filter on my body, and I was like, I need to keep that filter clean so that it can do its job. I basically just started to just remove a lot of the quote unquote toxic things, or things that could be toxic in my life, down to beauty products, down to, plastic, and, like trying to do more stuff like this, glass. I'm realistic about it though. Like, there's plastic everywhere in my house. It's fine. We're humans. Like, it's fine. So like I did what I could do within reason, not everything all at once, but I tried to definitely support my liver more, and of course just my overall health. And I started paying a little bit less attention to like bodybuilders, and paying a little bit more attention to people like Rhonda Patrick. Like, she was like one of my first biohacking queens back in the day, when she was one of the first on Rogan's podcast back in probably 2015 to really like talk about biohacking, and kind of bring it to the mainstream, at least for me. And that was when I started learning about all of these things, sauna, and just optimizing my health in general. And then, other than that, it's obviously there's so much that we can do with our nutrition. We could do like an entire podcast on that. But really trying to just fuel myself like an athlete, actually go into that, like my body is a temple type phase, and like when I really did start to treat my body like that, a lot of things started to change. Pulling out diet products, pulling out the like heavily processed, like protein added, like fitness products. That made a big difference for me. I used to rely heavily on those when I was first getting into bodybuilding. It's like you go to some of your first shows, you're walking around the booths, and like you're getting like all the fun products. Yeah, so like pulling those out really helped me. And then beyond that, it's really just like actually prioritizing rest, mental health, recovery. Those were the big kind of low-hanging fruit for me.
I love it. And I think when you start to encapsulate the areas that really move the needle the most, both in and out of the sport, but really the ones that are going to pay or give you the highest return dividends, it is going to be your nutrition and recovery. And whether someone wants to go deep into eliminating not necessarily certain foods, but like eliminating all catalyst of inflammation just in every and all sorts within their diet, depending on how hard they want to go in that direction. I mean, like to your discretion, sure. There's always the sustainability component that I know that you're very aware of, and it seems like, especially like outwardly, what you promote online is very much like, hey, we can do these things. Yes, they can be fun and they can make us feel good, but within reason, like if we can find some semblance of sustainability so that when we go into these maybe more intentional phases, like a contest prep where things are going to be more extreme, we're going to be sacrificing or potentially compromising, expecting to compromise on our health. We're not just throwing all these habits and tools to the wayside. I think you've done just a tremendous job of continuing to prioritize that and encouraging others to prioritize that, whether they're in the sport or not. It's like, yes, chase that physique that you value and you would like to attain, but don't let that be an excuse to kind of let the other barometers become depleted over the years.
Sustainability is everything.
Absolutely. I think so. Last question I have is on the nutrition side, because this is one I love. I know you and I both have histories with going just hard with like very reckless, like macro dieting back in the day. And now it's almost like I have to like preface, like when I say flexible dieting, I'm like, yeah, but like not the shitty way. Okay. Like I have to like asterisk it and be like, no, I'm not, like, we don't do Walden Farms here anymore. Okay. Like we're not adding baking soda to our pancakes. It's a little bit different. With nutrition in mind, flexible dieting, encompassing sustainability in and out of prep. What are some of the habits, or I guess like principles that you kind of live by when it comes to your own nutrition and your nutrition for clients?
Yeah, so, I'm now on my 13th year of tracking macros. I find it to be, at least the way that I've done it, and I've experimented, as you know, I've experimented with some things and different types of diets, a little bit of keto, a little bit of carnivore, just kind of experimented just to see kind of how it went, because I like treating myself like a guinea pig sometimes. But macros I've always used macros, and they have always been the foundation on the house, regardless of whatever kind of house I build on top of that. So the macros are always there, and obviously they've changed a lot over the years depending on my needs, and working with a coach the entire time, or at least for the last 10 years, has helped, tremendously. I couldn't do it without a coach, and I wouldn't be able to have gone from, like, at one point I was eating 120 grams of carbs, couldn't even eat more without like blowing up, and to the point where now my high day is 3,600 calories. Like what? So like things change, and it's from working with a coach. And also from, of course, like the research that I do like on my own body and like the kind of experimentation. So, I mean, the most important things for me, like you said, sustainability for sure. That is why I think I've gotten to a point where I can maintain a physique that's in a certain range without like crazy ups and downs. I think because I've literally been doing the same diet method for 12 years. Like, and the idea of tracking macros is extremely easy and extremely simple to me now. But I have also had to go through all of those challenges. You know, there are certainly macro challenges. Macros can be hard for some people, especially in the beginning, but that work pays off at some point. It gets so easy and it gets so automatic, and that's where I'm at, and that's why I'm still doing it. I'm sure I won't track forever. I'm sure I'll be a very informed, intuitive eater at some point, but I have no problem counting macros because they don't cause me any stress at this point. That's what's really important, right? Is like the problem with macros really happens when they induce stress. So that's my job. I'm a problem solver. As a coach, I'm here to solve problems. So I have my clients tell me every single macro challenge they run into, and I am here to solve them. I've been through everything. I have had to track macros in different areas of the world at different events. So I've got like so many tips and tricks that I feel like that is my job now, is to like share those with the world, because I do think that people need to know about macros. I don't think it needs to be just bodybuilders. I think that even children should have they shouldn't be doing it hardcore like we do, but I think that they should have knowledge of macronutrients, more knowledge. I think we need to know about the composition of our food, and that most people out there don't know it, or they have the wrong idea of what their food is made of, or what the macronutrient composition is. There's so many misconceptions. So I'm here to like educate and just problem solve basically. So I very much value balance. I'm very realistic in that, yes, ideally I want my clients to eat anything they can grow, catch, or kill. Right? That's a really simple way to put it. I don't know where I heard that a long time ago, but anything you can grow, catch, or kill. That really encompasses, your proteins, your plants, anything that comes from the earth. It encompasses all of your single ingredient foods. And that is like the ideal diet. Sure. Like, yeah, that's what we want for sure. Can we always do that? No problem. I just talked to a client today, and due to many challenges, I was like, I just want you to just add a protein shake or add a protein bar. And I'm not really recommending that, but for this client and her challenges and her makeup and what she's trying to do, and the fact that I need to feed her, I was like, why don't we just try throwing this in? Let me get your calories up, So it depends on the person, but I understand that we have to be realistic about just what life looks like, and the challenges, whether it comes to like, it can come down to finances. It can come down to the fact that I have a mom of 3 meal prepping every week. Her meal prep is going to look different than mine. Her food challenges are going to look really different than mine. So I just try to gather as much information about like, what are the challenges? I don't know them if you don't tell me. So I tell them, I'm like, please give me all of the information about your life so that I can understand, what the food challenges are. And I can help build a plan for anyone. I have professional wrestlers who are traveling around the country on like red-eye flights, and then they come home and they have kids and they're working. I have women who work in the ER who work like crazy shifts. Everyone's food situation is so different. So I try to really preach, of course, balance. And then it's like, let's just do what we can with the resources and the time that we have. So if I have time to meal prep, if I have money to go to Whole Foods and get the best grass-fed steak, great. If I don't, I'm going to do something else, So I think it's too individual to really be putting out and that's why like Instagram is really hard for me, because I do want to put out more content, but sometimes I get tripped up with the fact that I'm putting out like a message to everyone, and it's like, shit, it's really different for everybody. So Yeah, but in general, I like to see my clients eating, and myself eating, as few processed foods as possible. Of course, the simpler the better, and then always understanding that macros should never be set in stone. We should never just here's your macros. All right, I'm done. Like find a calculator online, and you're just like, those are your macros. Like I'm toggling my clients' macros constantly, constantly. So it's so individual.
Absolutely. And I love that the approach is largely based around the root of the problem because, I mean, I think that the approach that oftentimes people gravitate towards, or at least maybe come to you as a coach or come to me as a coach, they're like, hey, this is what's going on. When you start peeling back the layers of that, peeling back, okay, well, here is surface level. Okay, I can't be adherent to this diet. Or, I've tried macros before that didn't work for me. So I'd like to just move strictly towards a meal plan. I don't like veggies. So can we keep it as simple as possible? Over time, and it doesn't take a lot of time. That's a big misconception as well. Over time, you start to see as a coach, it's typically not the reported problem that is the root of the problem. It's typically something that is often deep seated and I find related to a behavior, cognition around food or belief that a food is going to result in this specific outcome. And I think moving away from that, whether that be a food that is lacking nutrient density or food that is highly nutrient dense, just understanding, okay, where is the client coming to you from? What are these beliefs? Are these beliefs based in reality, or are they something that has kind of been embedded over time through diet culture, through what they've been exposed to? And I think being able to give clients that relief by teaching them, like, hey, yeah, maybe you did overindulge. Maybe you, for several weeks, maybe you went through a phase where like this was the best you could do. And the best we can do as coaches is like finding a homeostasis for you from a body weight standpoint so it doesn't result in you overshooting in body fat. If that's the case, knowing that like, hey, coming out of this, like shedding that little bit of fat that you don't love, that doesn't make you feel like you, that is manageable. It doesn't have to be this mountain we climb each time. And I think demystifying the process and how to do that, like, I think that can be very powerful and it can, I mean, I'd like to think and I believe that it oftentimes allows people to feel more in control of their composition. And it doesn't have to be in these extreme instances of getting on stage. It can just be simply, okay, well, I'm not going to feel as stressed because of this weight gain, because of, this vacation I went on. I came back a little heavier than I wanted because I know what needs to happen now. It's going to be a slight modification. It's not going to be this elimination diet. It's not going to be this, just this extreme, preceding month. It's very much within reason to see those shifts in body composition. And it's not nearly as strenuous or
like it doesn't have to be that
I guess
hard.
relying on no, it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah, I think that like on this team, it's like we're trying to just like get people off of the roller coaster, and like that's what you do as well. Like we're all just like the aim is to get off the roller coaster and cruise. And the tough thing about that is that brings out a strange thing in some people. Some people don't like to cruise. There are some that do. I've noticed. There are also some that are like addicted to the roller coaster, almost like addicted to the adrenaline rush, and then addicted to the self-sabotage, and then and like everything has to be constantly changing. And I saw someone say that maintenance is the biggest flex, and I agree. And I think doing just that boring, just like same shit all the time and maintaining, if you can learn to chill and cruise in your journey, like that, I think is where you see a lot of big returns.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. Hana, I know we could talk for another hour on this, and I definitely want to have you back.
Okay.
Can you tell listeners where to find you if they'd like to reach out for coaching, consultation, or just tune into your content? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is just Hana Devore. It's Hana, Hana. I think it's Hana_Devore. That's pretty much all I do for social media. And then you can always check out fitbodyfusion.com. I have a bio there. I do have a consultation call form. So if you just fill that out, I'll set up a call. I always do free consultations. I'll do about a half an hour consultation where I'll talk to someone about where they are in their journey and where they're looking to take it and what I can do for them if I'm the right person. And I always say, if you want a coach, make sure that you find the right fit. Maybe talk to a few of them. I'm cool with that. Like, talk to me, talk to a few other people. Make sure that you find the right fit. But yeah, it's pretty much just Instagram, fitbodyfusion.com, and then my email is just hana@fitbodyfusion.com.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you guys for listening. Do me a favor and go follow Hana on Instagram. Go tune into her content, please. Thank you guys for listening. As always, I will see you in the next one.